Hi guys, welcome back to my channel For Your Heart and Home. My name is Dee Dee. Welcome into my kitchen. Today I have a full day of canning lined up to share with you. Canning is a preservation process that allows you to take otherwise perishable ingredients and make them shelf stable. There are two main types of canning. You can use a water bath method or you can use a pressure canning method. As a full disclosure, this channel is not a channel for any kind of canning tutorial. I suggest doing your own research to find trusted recipes for canning food, as well as proper canning times for preserving your food. If you're going to take the time to put together and preserve food for your family, you want to do it in a safe way. So I always encourage others to use trusted recipes and methods to do so. Water bath canning involves using a large pot filled with water. You're going to bring it to a boil. After cooking and jarring your food, you will place it in the water bath canner and bring it to a boil for a specified period of time, depending on the size of the jar and depending on the contents of the jar. Once you submerge the jars in your water bath canner, you want to ensure that there is water covering the can, so they're fully submerged in your water bath canning pot. It is important to have a large enough pot for the jars that you're using to do this safely. Pressure canning is slightly different and you will still use a large pot. You'll also be putting water in that pot, but not as much as in a water bath canner. Pressure canning differs from water bath canning in that you're going to put it in a special pot that is designed for pressure canning, and you will be building up pressure inside of that can, and that pressure is what will preserve the food and seal your jars. There are electric options both for water bath canning and for pressure canning, so you will have to do the research to see what method works best for you. In this video, I will be sharing with you recipes that I'm using, and I will be using the water bath canning method. I've been canning for over 13 years and I have always used the Ball canning product. I've used their jars and I've used their lids and have never had an issue. So now that we've discussed a little bit about canning, let's dive right into what I had prepared for you today. Here's a look at all the things that I will be canning today. I will be preserving pineapples, cranberries. I'm also making some tomato-based sauce that I use for pasta and pizza. I'm making applesauce, and I will also be making some Jamaican green sauce. The Jamaican green sauce will not be canned. I do not have a pressure canner and a way to preserve that long term, so I will be making the sauce and immediately refrigerating it. Additionally, I will be making ketchup and barbecue sauce. So I recently did the monthly shop for our family, and when I do that, I always set aside a day to do some kind of food preservation. So this was done a day or two after I had done the monthly grocery shop. The first thing I'm going to start with is the applesauce. I have washed the apples and removed the skins and cores, and I'm going to now put this in a large pot on my stove to cook down. While the applesauce is being made on the stove, I'm going to go ahead and get the cranberries ready. I have washed them and I will be putting them in quart-sized jars. I am using a cup and a half in each quart-sized jar of cranberries. To that, I will add some sugar, and then I'm going to top it off with boiling water. There's always controversy surrounding canning methods, and again, full disclaimer, I'm suggesting that you use a canning method that works for your family, and I am using one that we have used over the past several months and haven't had an issue with. If you're not comfortable using this canning method, that's okay. Find a method that works for your family. Prior to canning, it is important to wash and sanitize all your jars and all your equipment that you will be using in warm, soapy water. As I stated before, I've been canning for over 13 years at this point, but I primarily was canning jams and jellies. About 2 years ago, I started jarring our tomato-based sauces, and only recently have I started doing cranberry and pineapple. I love this process because it's very simple to do, and having not worked with cranberry, this was a very easy step for me to get used to the process. Our family really enjoys the cranberry juice, and so I was excited to find frozen cranberry when I went shopping recently, and we're able to enjoy this because we've gone through every single jar of cranberry juice that I made in the fall. So I'm going to be doing the cranberry and the pineapple simultaneously. I have already broken down my 2 pineapples, and now I'm going to put the cubes into my quart-sized jar. I'm not adding any sugar to the pineapple. I'm only adding sugar to the cranberry juice, and then I will be topping that off with water as well. Once my jars are filled, I'm going to wipe the rims, place my lids and bands on the top, and then I'm going to put it in my water bath canner. Again, I'm not going to discuss times because I'm going to trust that you're going to find a recipe that works for you, for your time, and for your location. So now that I've done this with cranberry and with pineapple, I'm thinking about other fruits that I could use this for. I know that blueberries is one that I've seen floating around the internet. I've also seen it done with grapes as well as strawberries. So I might be on the hunt in the next couple of months when I go grocery shopping to see if there are other fruits that I can do this preservation process with, as it's a way to infuse more nutrients in our family's diet and to give us more options. Okay, so now it's time to fill my jars with water. Again, I will be adding sugar to my cranberry jar, and I will not be adding sugar to the pineapple jars. You're going to fill it all the way to the top, leaving about an inch of headspace. You don't want to overfill your jar, as when they're in the water bath, they will siphon off and will prevent your jars from sealing properly. Once you have added your water, you want to debubble your jars with a non-metal debubbler. I've never really used this step before and didn't have an issue, but it's something that's recommended that you debubble the jars and put the lids and bands on. My lids and bands are sitting in warm water as I fill my jars. Once I'm done filling the jars, I'm going to clean the rims and then attach the lids and the bands. You don't want to skip the step that encourages you to have your lids and bands sitting in warm water, because the warm water is going to activate the wax in your lid. If the wax is not activated, it's not going to form a proper seal once you put it in your water bath. Again, I always use Ball products. I use their lids, I use their bands, and I use their jars. I have never had an issue with using their products. I've always had a proper seal, and I will continue using their products. So I only have one water bath canner, so this is going to take me several hours to process all of these jars. So while my first set of jars are in the canner, I'm going to be working on my applesauce. My applesauce has cooked down for a bit, so I'm simply going to put it in my blender and I'm going to blend it until smooth. Now, usually I add some cinnamon to my applesauce when I make it before I can it. This time I'm not adding any cinnamon, and that's because I'm using applesauce to replace eggs in some of my recipes, and it's not always a recipe that calls for cinnamon. So I'm keeping this batch of applesauce cinnamon free so that if I'm going to use it to replace eggs in any one of my recipes, I don't have to worry about the cinnamon taste. I've used applesauce to replace eggs in many recipes for many years for various reasons. I like the added flavor, and I also like the texture of the baked good when I use it to replace the eggs. Now, with the scare of egg prices, it's just one more thing that you can use to avoid paying high prices for eggs. If you'd like to see me swap out eggs for applesauce in any one of the recipes that I'm using, please leave a comment below and I'll be sure to include that in a future video. If you're interested in any of the recipes that I'm using for canning today, feel free to read the description box. I will include the recipes that I'm using. And again, I will not be discussing canning times. I will not be discussing specific recipes because I suggest and encourage you to find what works best for you in your location. Find a trusted recipe book for recipes that you can use that will allow you to preserve your food safely, and follow the appropriate steps for canning time to ensure that you are keeping your jars in your water bath for long enough, or if you're pressure canning, follow the times so that you are following the steps safely to preserve this food for your family. So once my applesauce is cooked down a bit on the stove, I'm simply going to put it in my blender and blend it until I get the consistency that I'm looking for. Then in my already sanitized jars, I'm going to fill them. Again, I'm going to leave a little bit of headspace, about an inch of headspace between my food product and my lid. So my applesauce is done. I'm waiting for my first set of jars to run through my water bath canner. So I'm going to put those to the side. And now I'm going to work on my tomato-based sauce. This is a universal sauce in my kitchen. I use it for pasta making. I use it for pizzas as well. I'm using a recipe that is very customizable, and I like to adjust certain things in my recipe from time to time. Sometimes I'll make it with a little bit more spice, and other times I'll keep it on the mild side. This is a very basic tomato based sauce, and you can add more to the sauce once you're cooking. This sauce has tomatoes, onions, parsley, basil, and I did put a bit of Jamaican Scotch bonnet peppers in there as well, and I like the flavor that it adds. To cut down on cooking time, I start my tomato sauce by blending all the ingredients together. Some will encourage you to cook down your tomatoes, and this can take several hours. For me, I blend all the ingredients at once, then I place it in a large stock pot on my stove, and I start the cooking down process. To that, I will add some avocado oil. In this case, I used grapeseed oil, and I also will add a bit of dried seasonings. You're going to cook this down until you achieve the consistency that you're looking for. To this sauce, I also added some tomato paste as a thickening agent. That helps to bring through the color that you're expecting to see in a tomato-based sauce, and it adds the thickness as well. Again, I use this sauce on everything that needs tomato-based sauce, whether it's pizza, pasta, or anything in between. All right, so here you see that I have already cooked down all of my tomato-based sauce, and now I'm going to put them in jars. I'm going to start by putting them in pint-sized jars. That way I can just pull 1 pint off the shelf, and usually that's enough for what I need for each recipe. If you do open one of your jars, it's important that you refrigerate it if you have anything left over. Now this is very hot, so I'm going to take my time to fill my jars. Again, you're going to leave about an inch of headspace before you attach your already warmed lids and bands to the top. Remember to clean your rims before attaching your lids and bands. Again, making these tomato-based sauces is something that I've been doing for quite some time. I love to be in the kitchen, and whenever I can replace a store-bought item with something made from scratch, it brings me great joy. I have not bought tomato-based sauces for a home in quite some time now. It's probably years at this point. We might have purchased some when we were on vacation recently, but outside of that, I have not had to buy tomato-based sauces, and this is just one less thing I have to buy from the grocery store. I know what's in it, and I feel confident feeding this to my family. I am also proof that you do not have to have a home garden to be able to make your own homemade sauces. This is made with tomatoes and other ingredients that I got from my grocery store. So you don't have to wait until you have a backyard garden to make your sauces from scratch. This will last me maybe 2, possibly 3 months, depending on how many products I use in the next couple of weeks. So the next thing I'll be showing you is the makings of ketchup. And if you're interested in a recipe, again, for pasta sauce or for ketchup or for the barbecue sauce I'll be using, I will include that in the description box below. Ketchup starts with tomato paste as the base. And as I shared before, I do not have a backyard garden, so I start with cans of tomato paste that I get in the grocery store. And you're going to cook that down, and to that you're going to add various ingredients. You're going to add brown sugar, you're going to add granulated sugar, some salt. All the ingredients will be listed in the description box below in the recipe that I used. And you're just going to cook that down and to the consistency that you're looking for. You're also going to taste test it to whatever your family enjoys. Ketchup is something that I've been doing for almost a year now. And once again, this is something that I've replaced. I don't have to put it on my list anymore of things to buy from the grocery store. It's something that I can make on my own. I know what's in it, and I feel safe canning this for my family to use. Especially with these thicker sauces, you want to make sure you do a good job removing any food buildup from your rims before attaching your lids. Again, this step is very important as it will prevent your lids from adhering to your rims. You must remove the food buildup before attaching your lids. This recipe gave me 4 quarts of ketchup, and this will last us 1 month, maybe 2 months. Now, according to the instructions on the ball lids, these will seal for up to 18 months. So this will last quite some time on your shelves if done properly. So the next thing I'm working on is the barbecue sauce. Barbecue sauce starts as ketchup, so many of the ingredients that you included in the ketchup recipe will also be included in the barbecue sauce. So I cooked everything down in the stock pot on my stove, and now I'm filling my jars with the barbecue sauce. This I had to play around with a lot to get the taste and the texture that I was looking for. But it's very simple. Once you've gathered all your ingredients and you follow all the steps, it's really simple to do. The next thing that I'm going to work on while my barbecue sauce is being processed on the stove is some Jamaican green sauce. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you know that I like to have this on hand, especially for preparing my proteins. It is the base of most, if not all, of my protein preparation. This will not be canned. I will not be putting this in the water bath canner to preserve it. This will not become shelf stable. When I'm finished working on this, I will be putting this in my refrigerator, and this will last 2, possibly 3 weeks, because I cook often and so I use a lot of the green sauce. So it will not last a long time in my refrigerator. If you're interested in a recipe for Jamaican green sauce, I will have that linked in the description box below. It's going to take me a while to run all these ingredients through my blender, but it's very simple. This recipe includes garlic, onion, green onions, fresh thyme, parsley, cilantro, peppers, and other spices. All the things that are included will be listed in the description box below. I'm going to run this through my blender until I get the consistency that I'm looking for. I'm going to place it in a jar, and then I'm going to refrigerate it after. So I want to ensure that I have a consistent taste across my 2 bottles. So I was able to put all of my green sauce into one big container, stir it all together to make sure I have the consistency that I'm looking for and the taste across the bottles, since it took 2 bottles to hold all of these ingredients. So by this point, it's late in the night. All my jars have been processed and they have sealed. Now, Canon books will tell you that you should leave your jars on your counter undisturbed for 24 to 48 hours to make sure that they seal well. You are then to remove the bands, wash your jar in soapy water to ensure that there is no food residue on your jars, and then you're going to place them in your storage area. So today's day of canning was very long, and I was able to get several jars done. Again, I was able to preserve some pineapples, cranberries. I made tomato-based sauce that I will be using for pasta and pizza. I also made ketchup. I made some barbecue sauce. I made applesauce, and then I made some Jamaican green sauce. I would say this was a very successful day. I'm really glad I was able to accomplish all this today. It took all day, but I'm glad I was able to get it all done. If you have any questions about water bath canning, if you have any questions about canning in general, if you have any tips or any ideas of what I should try next, feel free to leave a comment in the description box below. So here's a look at my canning shelf at the beginning of the day. I only had maybe 1 jar of applesauce left and a few jars of my pasta sauce, and the rest is really just jams and jellies. now have several jars of applesauce, several jars of pasta sauce, several jars of ketchup, several jars of barbecue sauce, and all my juices for cranberry and pineapple will be stored down below on my third shelf. This is just my grain storage for my freshly milled flour. Now, there's controversy surrounding keeping your bands on your jars once they have sealed. The concern is that if your jar becomes unsealed and your band is on the jar, you will not know that it has become unsealed, and your food will sit and spoil unbeknownst to you. I have always kept the bands on my jars once they are finished, and I've been doing this for 13 plus years. Again, I am not a channel for canning tutorials. I suggest that you do what's best for your family, and I suggest you do what is safe for your family. I have always left the lids and the bands on my jars once I have processed them. My canning supply is within arm's reach of me when I'm in the kitchen, and I am constantly checking on my jars to make sure that they are sealed. I keep my canning supply really close to me, and so I'm constantly looking at them, checking to make sure that they have retained their seal. And once I open a jar, I check the jar for any kind of spoilage. And if there's ever any question when you open a jar, just don't use it. I have never had any food loss. I have never had any jars come unsealed. This is how I have kept it for years, and I've been doing this for a very long time. Again, I don't want to encourage anybody to do anything that they don't feel comfortable with. This is what I feel comfortable with. This is how I've always done it, and this is what I'm going to continue to do. And I suggest you do what makes you comfortable. Once again, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me in my kitchen today. Like and share my videos. Subscribe to help me grow in this space. If you have any questions about anything, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I will be sure to respond to your comment. Check the description box for all the recipes, and I'll also link a few canning books in the description box as well, where you can find other recipes for food preservation. Thanks so much for spending this time with me today. All the best to you.